All right, so this morning I want to make a video talking about air pruning beds to grow, well, I typically grow trees and shrubs in them, although I'm sure you could grow other things in air prune beds. But it's a way to grow trees and shrubs that really gets me excited. I really like growing them this way, and I'm excited to talk about it. I've made a few short little, TikTok videos on this before, and I've tried to record some footage for a longer form video because I have a lot to say, but I lost some of that footage. So I'm trying again today because I'm in the process of building more boxes. And so this will kind of be two things. I'll try to take you along on the process as I'm building the boxes, and then I'll actually go out over into the nursery over there and show you what some of these boxes look like once they're assembled. It's a beautiful mid-January day out here, 2023 at the time of me recording this. You can probably hear the birds. So here I am out in the nursery where I have some of my previous air pruning beds boxes made here. And so let's get into it. I want to start off, like with everything, in saying that I'm not claiming to have the right way to do this or the only way. I've already tried a couple of different ways to make these, and I'm kind of learning as I go. All right, so just to show you a little bit about how an air prune box works, let's look at this right here, which is the first air prune box I ever built. And the basic gist is that you're building a frame, basically 4 sides made out of wood. The bottom is going to have this hardware cloth. I use 1/4 inch sometimes. I also use 1/2 inch sometimes. You could maybe even go 1/2 inch by 1 inch for the bottom. And I'm going to show you underneath. It's probably going to be hard to see. You can see the screen is holding up the soil. You can see, looking in the bed here, there's mulch on top. You can see some little trees sticking up. Those are some baby chestnut trees from last year. And the basic idea is that you're planting the seeds on the top. The tree roots are going to grow down to the bottom of the box. And you can see that the box is propped up off the ground. Here I'm using just some random pieces of wood, but cinder blocks and things also work great for that. And because there's air underneath of here, when the roots hit this screen, they can go through the screen, but then they're in the air. And out here in the air, they can't get access to water, and they're pruned off by the air, and they die. But they only die back up to this screen. There the root is able to heal from that injury. Because the root can't go any further down, and because the root actually got pruned off, the root doesn't do what it would typically do in a pot, which is bind up and circle in the bottom of the pot. It's forced to send its energy back up the root and go out horizontally and branch a lot. This results in a really fibrous root system that's really strong. You still have a defined taproot that's about the total depth of the box, but you don't have root binding, and you have really, really good horizontal structure, like branching structure up and down throughout the whole length of the root. Then in the fall, when the trees go to sleep, because they're in this box, they're pretty easy to transplant. You would just take off this protective cage that's protecting the above ground parts of the tree from animals and whatnot. You take this part off. You could even take this top. See how this is 2 pieces of wood? It's 2 frames. You could take this top part off, peel back some of the soil, and it's really easy to just pluck the trees out one by one. Or sometimes you can pluck a whole bunch out, and then you can transplant them or do whatever. You could pot them up at that point, whatever is appropriate for you. So I like that compared to pots, we don't have the root binding issue, and we have a better root structure overall. Additionally, you could kind of think of this as a huge pot. And so because we have more soil than a typical pot, these don't dry out as fast. So the watering needs are less compared to growing trees in pots. The other thing is, comparing this to growing trees in the ground, if you grow trees in the ground, they're not going to get root bound, but their taproot is going to go as deep as it can go. And when you go to dig those trees up in the off season when they're asleep, you're going to risk damaging those roots. Not to say that it can't be done. You totally can grow trees in the ground and transplant them. But there's more risk of damaging the taproot when you're doing that, especially with deep taprooted species such as a lot of our nut trees, oaks and walnuts and that sort of thing, hickories. So that's the basic gist with air pruning beds, is it's a frame with a screen on the bottom to prune the roots. And I typically put a cage on the top to protect from animals. All these that have cages, or that don't have cages, they just have the screen here. This is a temporary fix to save me time. I've already planted these out, mostly in acorns and apples and things. And the seeds are just kind of sleeping there right now. You know, there's a covering of seeds on the top. They're going to wake up in the spring, and before they wake up, I need to build cages like this. But in the meantime, this was a quick way to just protect the seeds from rodents mostly throughout the wintertime. And I've been experimenting with all sorts of different iterations of how to build these. Like these I built with, you know, 2x12s. This was just scrap wood, whatever I had laying around. This was 2 sets of 2x8s, you know. This was part of an old bed frame that I picked out of the dumpster. So whatever I've got laying around, I kind of just play. A lot of these beds are 3x3. That's just because I had 3-foot hardware cloth laying around. In the future, I think I'd rather deal with 2-foot hardware cloth and do like 2x4-foot beds is what I want to play with next. But like, you know, that one's 2x2, that one's 2x2. I don't really think the size matters. I think you just got to play around with it. I've decided I really prefer stacking them up on cinder blocks because I've had some issues. I'm spinning around here a lot. Like with this first bed that I built last year, it was kind of too low to the ground, and a lot of the grass was actually growing up through the ground and into the bottom of the box and trying to poke through that way, which can be a little bit of a complication. You know, when I was doing some maintenance in the fall, I had to dig all that grass out from the bottom, and if you have things too close to the ground, or if the grass grows up too much, you know, there could be less airflow going through there, and you could get a tree root that punches through into the ground, which would be difficult to extract without damaging the tree. So I prefer to be higher up off the ground. I'm trying to source more cinder blocks out of the garbage now. I prefer to not buy new ones if I can avoid it, but I will if I have to. I also think that I didn't some of these early boxes that I built that are in front of me here, I don't think I reinforced them as much as I could have. So on the bottom, I have these runners supporting the screen, which when I get into building another box later today, it will be easier to demonstrate this. But I've had some of these runners either snap in the middle, or the screw will break off right here. And then the screen is hanging down like this, and soil's kind of spilling out. So I think, especially on these bigger boxes, having a strong middle support makes a big difference. That's something I'm trying to implement more of as I get into it. And so I think that's probably enough rambling about these boxes. I'll try to show you some of the actual process of building them over here now. And yeah, we'll just see where it goes. You know, for me, this is the least exciting part, the actual building of the boxes. And the most exciting part is when the trees are growing in them and sprouting. So that'll happen in the spring, and I'll update when that happens. It also can be pretty fun filling up the box with soil and with seeds. So if I can manage to get a few more frames built out, we'll do that later on in the day today.